Hello, and welcome to the Tuning In podcast. I'm Dana Evans, your inner voice and emotional support coach. In this podcast, we explore the deep wisdom that lives in our bodies, emotions, and inner voice. Together, we'll shed the layers that no longer serve us, creating space to tap into the flow of life and experience true ease. So, are you ready to join me? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. I had another episode planned for today all about letting people down and why we need to start doing it more. However, that episode I think needs a little more expansion. I've been taking notes as ideas have been coming through because I've been seeing this a lot in client sessions and in general conversations over the holiday season. It's been a huge theme, and I'm not ready to fully bring it to form as a podcast, so that will probably be coming in January, which is great because you've all already committed to your holiday plans, so we can talk about letting people down in January, and that can be one of our practices in the new year. And yes, I'm using that facetiously. It's really about reframing how we see making choices as letting people down, when really we are upholding something that is of value for us and everyone around us, even if it's uncomfortable. So that is coming. But today, this is a holiday week. I think a lot of people have days off. I know Christmas is this week and Hanukkah starts this week. And then we go into that liminal space between Christmas and the new year. So it's like a weird time. And instead of releasing an educational podcast, I'm going to release one that's more about what we can do in this time and space to remain grounded, to calibrate our systems, and to really rest and allow the liminal space to take form. This will be my last episode of the year. So happy 2025, everyone. I personally have been doing quite a bit of reflecting, not active journaling, but I've been doing a lot of contemplation. I've been meditating every day. Since the last episode, when I was really talking about my journey to slowing down, guess what? The slowing down has worked, and I've started to settle into a different rhythm of life. No, I'm not sitting on the couch every day staring at nothingness, but I've shifted my pace and how I'm operating, and it feels really good. And what I have found, which you will find as well, when I have more space, when I'm slowing my pace, I have more time to reflect. So things are popping up like, oh, this is something I worked on a lot this year. Oh, I didn't realize that I untangled this. Oh, look how I acted differently when faced with that. It's really nice to be able to reflect and see ourselves, especially at the end of the year. I know there's a lot of end of the year roundups, right? Like, here's all the books you read, here's all the music you listened to. I think it's so fun. And I think it's really valuable for us to do our own roundup. I personally am not a huge journaling person. And so whenever I would do programs or end of year things, and they'd be like, here's 24 journaling prompts for you to reflect on the year. It was like so overwhelming. And honestly, I'm like, ugh, gross. No, I don't want to do that. But I do like to have contemplations, and I do like to sit back and notice, like, what did I do? What was working well this year? What wasn't? I might write those down at some point, but right now it's just like coming as insights, and I'm really enjoying that. I also am participating in a program, I guess you can call it a program. It's called 12 Nights of Magic, and it just brings us back into ritual during this time of year. So instead of a bunch of journaling prompts, instead of a bunch of activities, it's really some simple rituals. But the first ritual that was this weekend was clearing out and making space. And you know, if you have listened to this podcast for any period of time, you know that is one of my favorite topics. And one of my favorite things to do is make space, clear out, and organize. So I actually spent the last weekend, the last 3 days really, doing so much clear out. If y'all could see my list, I actually had to keep adding things to my list so I could check them off. Do you do that? Because I just wanted to capture, I was in this really clear, clean energy. And with it, I wanted my home to match it. Things that I tackled, I had taken a bunch of stuff out of my office so I could bring in my new couch and rug. All of my office stuff was in the hallway. So I managed to go through all of that, bring some of it back into my office, get rid of some of it, and then put some of it in the garage in a cupboard. We did cleaning. So John cleaned the bathrooms. I got a new steam cleaner, so I am going to steam clean the floors this week. I cleaned and organized my closet. We smudged the house. And then I did all these like appliance cleanings. Oh my God, these kill me. But I cleaned the toaster oven, the dishwasher, the microwave, the coffee maker, like literally scrubbed the coffee maker with a steel brush and then ran a vinegar cycle. It's so clean. I went to my favorite spice shop, Savory Spice Shop, got a whole spice restock and then refilled and organized all my spices. Oh, they're so beautiful. I have 2 closets in our hallway. One of them's like a linen closet. One of them's kind of like a catch-all. Y'all, they were so messy. I've wanted to work these out forever. I finally did that yesterday. It's so pretty. I love a good before and after. Both of these closets had bags and boxes of cords and random electronics. Are those not the worst? Like, I hate random electronics and cords because it's like, what do you do with them? I went through all of them, kept the essentials, put certain ones in a donation pile, and then I have like a master box of cords and electronic things in the garage, so at least they're all in one space. I also went through Mia's. She has like a chest, but it opens up and it has all of Mia's clothing and toys. So Mia and I went through all of her toys. Oh, and here she's walking into the room right as I'm talking about her. We moved her, washed off her tent that she sits in the summer at night, and we moved that into the garage, stored it. Then I was able to do some personal stuff like a bentonite clay face mask and an underarm mask, which is really, really useful if you work out a lot or if you find that your underarms are a little extra stinky. You can use bentonite clay. I just mix it with some apple cider vinegar and spread that on your underarms. You let it dry and then it pulls out all of the bacteria and gunk. Oh my gosh, my face also felt so good afterward. I took a nice bath. I tended to my nails, like, all of that personal stuff. It just felt so, so good. And there's some other things. I did some digital cleanup. So anyway, it's been a fun weekend. Actually, genuinely, I enjoyed myself and I was able to just make more space in the house. It was needed. It felt really nice to be able to do that without a lot of other pressures, which, by the way, when I do the next podcast episode, last week was like the week of canceling. My friend joked, she's like, this is the new cancel culture. And it really is, where I just canceled so many things. I had overcommitted, and in the midst of wanting to slow down, I really had to just, even to the point of looking ridiculous to certain people, I had to cancel and basically go back on my word on some things. And that's really uncomfortable, but I was able to do it with honest conversations and transparency of where I was at. And so because of that, I had so much more space to tend to the things that needed tending. This time of year, it's dark, it's quiet, it's slow. In a lot of places, it's cold. It's not this time to keep pushing and going outward. It really benefits us to retract and retreat, to root down. And I've been carrying this torch for a while. I know I keep talking about it, but even while I'm talking about it, I could feel myself going out. And so this past week, I really had to pull back, and it felt so good. And because I was containing my energy, I believe that's why I had so much energy and clarity when it came to clearing out my house, making space, organizing, tackling these projects that, a lot of them have been on my list for months. So it felt really, really good. There's so many little things that we can do to tend to our home or tend to ourselves. Maybe your skin needs to be polished, right? Maybe you need to do a body scrub and a bath and a little oil before bed. There's just so many ways that we can take care and tend to our own needs that doesn't feel exhausting, but feels really nourishing and actually replenishes your whole system instead of depleting. And that's really the question I've been asking myself is this going to replenish and restore, or is this going to deplete? And I really had to be mindful of that over the past weekend because I have a tendency when I get on like a cleaning fixation, I can go so hard and so long that I burn myself out. And then I'm cranky and exhausted and frustrated and I don't get the projects done. So I was really mindful this weekend to do it at a pace and speed that felt right for me, and then to stop before I was tired. It's a tricky balance, but I was able to maintain it. And now I just have a couple things left before we head out to the hot springs this week. So John and I are not traveling to see our families for Christmas. We are going to the hot springs, just the two of us, and just enjoying some quality time. Going to be a little bit off the grid, going to soak in the sun, soak in the minerals, read, and just chill, the two of us. And I think we both really need that. And it's a nice little deadline for me because I wanted certain things done before then so that we're leaving a really clean space behind. That's just a little update and an invitation for you. Then, one thing that I like to remember when things are getting to be a lot. So if you have a lot of family or a lot of events, or you haven't been able to extract yourself from all of the things that you overcommitted to, or you're feeling extra agitated, or you're not sleeping well and your temperament's off. Like, trust me, I've had quite a bit in the last week of just being a little frustrated. A lot also comes up when you have space. Just a reminder, being busy is one of the best distractions from our emotions and from what's going on internally. So you might think you're too busy to process emotions or too busy to feel, but that's by design. The busier you are, the more likely you have a lot of emotion that's unprocessed that needs to come to the surface. That's why we like to have practices like the Emotions Decoded program and daily emotional hygiene practices that help us bring emotions to the surface before they become so much that they explode, because that's going to be the tendency for all of us, especially during higher pressure, higher activity, higher expectation times. We can get overwhelmed with emotion, with responsibilities, with expectations, with to-dos, and we get so busy that we forget about the emotional state. With that, you can snap, you can have rage, you can have frustrations, you can be really reactive, you can be passive aggressive. All of those things will show up. And it just is showing you that there's unprocessed emotion that wants to be addressed. And so when you start to make a little bit of space, you might notice more emotion shows up. That's okay. But the more you make intentional space, the easier the emotions will move out and through on a regular basis. I definitely felt it last week. Oh boy, I had so much emotion, and a lot of it I don't think was even mine. There was a ton of frustration. And there was also a ton of tears. And the tears didn't feel like I was crying over something specific or even that I was grieving. It was more like release. It felt like just releasing anything that was old that wanted to move out, anything that is pent up, anything that I didn't want to carry over into January, anything that I'd already processed but just needed a little help to move out, and even some collective energies. And honestly, I totally welcomed and embraced those tears. Everything was making me emotional for a couple days, and I just let it move. I thanked them because I knew that this is moving out. Goodbye. Thank you for staying. You can go home now. This can be a time of heightened emotion. It's a change of season. It's a closing of a chapter, right? We have all of these things going on. There's also family dynamics. So remember that it's allowed, it's okay. We don't need to fight them. We don't need to avoid them. If we have practices to support ourselves with the emotions, it can just help everything run more smoothly. So I want to remind you of the order in which I go in order to access emotional release and ultimately your inner voice, right? Because why do we process emotions? To get to the other side of the emotional charge, which is where peace lives, which is where we access source, we access inner voice, we access the clarity that we're seeking outside of ourselves. That clarity comes from within. It comes in that deep peace and knowing of the present moment. In order to get to that, it can be really challenging when we're so busy, when we're in our heads, when we're distracted, when we're super emotional, when we're tired. That can be a really hard time to access that inner peace, that inner voice. It can be the time when you start seeking, like looking for anything, anybody, any purchase to get you what you're deeply wanting. That exhale, right? That sense of relief. But instead of going out, we can go in. And I know it's uncomfortable and I know we're going to want to avoid it. And it also is the quickest pathway toward what you actually are seeking. But sometimes that stillness is really hard to access when you're so busy in your mind. The order in which I prefer to go through to get to the inner voice actually starts with the mind. We don't need to avoid the mind. We don't need to frog leap the mind. We don't need to shun it or push it aside or be mad that it's so loud. We actually start with it. We say, okay, what's on your mind? Whether that's talking it out with someone, a friend, a coach, a family member, or talking it out to yourself on voice memos or journaling it, get it out. What's underneath the surface? I'm afraid I'm lazy if I slow down. I'm afraid that if I say no to this, my mother-in-law will never forgive me and I'll have to deal with that for the rest of my life. I'm afraid that I'm not giving my kids enough gifts and that they're going to miss out on the joy of Christmas. I'm afraid that I'm already behind and the new year hasn't even started. Whatever is coming up though, what's creating that reaction of being overbusy, of being overstretched, of not being able to settle? What's happening inside and what's happening in your mind? What is your body and your activities compensating for? So sometimes we just need to pause and sit down and reflect and be like, what's actually happening under the surface? What am I actually avoiding? What happens if I allow it to be heard and spoken and acknowledged? Once it comes out, once it comes through, once the clarity is there, you just say, thank you for sharing. I hear you. I see you. I'm listening. Let's see if there's other ways to look at this. So let it out through the mind. The next step is to go into the body. Usually when we talk about going into the body, it's like, okay, settle into the stillness. Where do you feel it in your body? What's happening? Love that process. But when we're busy and when the mind's going, sometimes we can't go straight into the stillness of the body. What we need is actually to move. So in that instance, I actually invite you, after getting everything out from the mind, talking it out, writing it out, speaking it out, then we address from the body perspective, which is, let's move it. What does this feel like? Are you frustrated with it? Stomp. Are you feeling like it's really sticky? Move and sway. Are you feeling agitated by it? Shake, shake, shake. Are you feeling afraid of it? Push forward, cut through the air, move it through the physical body. Find the way that works for you. It doesn't have to look or feel like anything you've ever done. Just intuitively ask yourself, how do I want to move what just came through? Once you get the movement going, you'll find a rhythm. Then you'll also find a natural point where you're wanting to slow down. So go from the speed and start to slow, slow, slow until you get to stillness. At that point in the stillness, pause and feel the vibration that the movement created. When you feel the vibration that the movement created, it is in contrast to your own inner stillness that you've created. So sit with those two and hold them and breathe with them. Start to move the breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. You can do a circular breath where at the top of the exhale before you pause, you start to inhale. And at the bottom of the inhale before you pause, you start to exhale and you circulate your breath. Or you can do a gentle counted breath, like inhale for 1, 2, 3. Exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Or you can do inhale, inhale, and then exhale slowly. Inhale, inhale, and then exhale slowly. There's so many ways to breathe, but think of the breath as moving as well. After doing that for a minute, you come back to your natural breath and let it find its own rhythm. From that place, the mind should be quieted and settled because it was seen and heard and listened to. The body should be settled because it was able to move and express. The breath is settled because you were able to shake out any internal cobwebs that were stuck and left behind. From that place, you drop in. That is the space where your inner voice lives, deep down from your heart, down towards your belly or your pelvic floor. Drop into the stillness within, and that is where you ask. That is the place you seek. That is the place that feeds you. That is the place where your answers live. That's where you can place your question. From the clarity you got from expressing through your mind, you'll sense the answer. You'll get a knowing, a nudge, an insight, a memory, some point of clarity, even if the clarity is to do nothing, to just sit and pause and be in the stillness for just a moment. Once you've opened this portal, as you go through the rest of the day, you'll find little nudges happening that are gently directing or redirecting you to stay within that stillness. From that place, you might make different decisions. You might speak differently. You might feel differently. You might tend to yourself differently. This whole process doesn't have to take more than 5 to 10 minutes, though of course you might enjoy being in it longer. But that can start to shift how you operate and tend to yourself and your needs, especially in a time when there's a lot going on. So I hope this was supportive for you. Go through that process. Remember, mind, body, breath, inner voice, and that will bring you back to self, back to stillness, back to peace, and back to the clarity that you're deeply seeking. I will see you all in 2025. I'm really excited for what this year has to bring, what I get to bring to you, how I get to support and contribute and connect. I've been doing a lot of behind the scenes business things, some visioning, some planning, some opening to what's next, and I'm excited to bring you on the journey with me. So as always, thank you for listening this year and being a part of this community. You are welcome to text me. In the show notes, there's text this episode link at the bottom. Y'all, I love hearing from you. So send a message. It will come straight into my email and you can text it from your phone and let me know what you're releasing, how you're inviting space through the rest of this year. And if there's anything else you'd like to hear from me, please let me know because then I can bring that in for you. Happy New Year. Good job this year. I know it was a lot. We've got courage. We've got stamina. We've got connection. We've got our inner voices and the stillness that comes within. And we have the ability to process and handle emotions and pain and difficulties that come our way. And we're going to just keep going deeper and getting stronger and more expansive along the way. So thank you as always, and we'll catch you next year. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Tuning In podcast. If you loved this episode, please rate and review it or share it with a friend. If you want to go deeper into the realm of emotions and learn the language of your body, check out my audio course, Emotions Decoded, at alignful.com/audio. As always, you can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans. See you next week.